everyone. I'm Fiona Lang-Sharpe, IBCLC Director of Communications and MC for Gold Learning. Welcome to all of you coming in from around the world. It's absolutely fabulous to have you here today because we have something very special to talk about and to share with you today. Today, we will be talking with Fleur Bickford, our Director of Education Programming, and Cynthia Good, who is our Program Chair for Gold Lactation 2020. And as you may know, our conference is just around the corner here, and we are celebrating 14 years in over 80 countries with over 3,200 delegates attending. That's pretty amazing. And let me tell you, this year we have over 30 speakers coming to you live, and we also have a full spectrum of education, which includes a lot of research, which we'll be talking about just in a minute. We've got clinical skills, workshops, and of course, all of that is focused in the field of lactation. You'll be able to enjoy all of the conference through an interactive and live webinars. You'll also be able to watch the recordings at your own pace. And as long as you can connect to the internet anywhere in the world, you'll be alongside us as well. We are fully accredited in CERPs and, of course, other CEUs for physicians, nurses, midwives, doulas, dietitians, and students, and many other professionals. Registration for our conference is in fact open right now, and so you will be able to join us on March 30th, which is our opening keynote day. Now that presentation will be live and it is open and free to all of you listening in right now. We will have the lovely Brina Sampi, and she is going to be talking about breastfeeding with ease, the impact of infant reflex, emergence, and integration. Well, without any further ado, let me introduce to you my two guests that are here with us today. I'd like to introduce to you Cynthia Good. Cynthia is an IBCLC, a mental health care provider, speaker, and author who is passionate about lactation. Cynthia is our program chair for Gold Lactation 2020. And we also have Fleur Bickford with us here today. And Fleur has an extensive background in perinatal health and is a registered nurse and IBCLC as well. Fleur's clinical experience in perinatal care, combined with her professional experience with educating both families and healthcare professionals, led themselves with her role here as Director of Education Programming. Well, let's get chatting with both Cynthia and Fleur and find out more about the program and how it was put together today. So Cynthia, welcome to Gold Lactation here. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I've got some questions for you because I'm really wanting to know more about it. And you and I had a chance to work a little bit together this year, which was, of course, fabulous. But I really want to get into the details a little bit more about the education and from your point of view. So can you tell me a little bit about how you see the growing need for lactation professionals to really even have continuing education in their tool belts?
Sure. The way I see it, the world is really a very complex place.
Mhm.
And because of that, one size fits all care doesn't work well at all. And so it's really important for us to remain humble to all of the diversity of knowledge out there that we need to serve the clients we have right now and the clients we might have tomorrow. And so, how do we do that, right? We've got to keep up with the rapid pace of new research, which is
Sure.
very difficult to do just, on an individual basis. And we've got to, learn about, sure, kind of more ordinary garden variety lactation challenges, but also complex cases that we could
Mm,
encounter and we haven't yet. We don't realize we need that knowledge, but we're going to.
right.
There's also the growing use of technology, and not only, for us as professionals, but also how it's used in the lives of our clients and what we need to know about that. And, speaking of technology, the new generation of parents, right?
Right.
Every year we've got new parents coming in and they're living in a different world than they lived in, than parents lived in 10 years ago, 15
Yeah.
years ago, 20 years ago. So what is it that they need? What new challenges are they facing? Because that's dynamic. And of course, we are, as a field, increasingly aware about the importance of inclusive care.
Hmm.
We, you know, s- Many of us are serving communities that are quite diverse, and if we are not familiar with the needs of those communities and how what we bring
Hmm.
culturally to an encounter may or may not match the needs of the person that we're helping in the encounter, we're not going to be as effective. So how do we do that? How do we put that into practice? So basically, we're trying to improve the quality of care that the families we serve are receiving from us so that we can help them achieve their lactation goals and have positive outcomes.
Wow, I mean that's a lot to digest, but I mean listening to you, I'm just hearing a lot of what, how rapidly the needs of our families are changing, and I mean staying up to date. It was, it's so important when you said, we don't know that we're going to have those complex cases until they land, at our, it right on our desks. So it's important that we really, are up to date on everything. And Fleur, I'd like to bring you into this conversation as well. I want to hear some more about what you see as being important for lactation professionals in their continuing education. I know you've been working very closely with Cynthia on this as well, but what struck you as being really important for our lactation professionals this year?
Oh, thank you, Fiona. And first of all, I would just like to say that it has been such a pleasure to have Cynthia as part of our planning process this year. So Cynthia brings with her such a depth of knowledge, experience, and enthusiasm that has really helped with our process of planning this year. So that has been fantastic. And just to echo some of what Cynthia was saying, I think in terms of continuing education, it's really one of those things where we don't know what we don't know. And the more I continue to learn, the more I realize just how much there is to learn. And as Cynthia mentioned, that rapid pace of new research. One of the things that fascinates me is the fact that, so for example, just in the past few years, they have identified new organs within the body that we didn't know existed. So if we, are starting to discover organs, we thought that we knew everything that there was to know about the human body, and now we're figuring out like, wow, no, there really is a lot more to know. And so that is something that I think is really, that just highlights to me how important it is for us to keep going with our continuing education, to make sure that we are, as Cynthia had said, kind of humble enough to recognize that we don't know it all. And we do need to continue working on learning and growing. And that is something that we have really worked hard on with this program. And again, as Cynthia mentioned, our goal really is to help improve the quality of care received by the families that we help.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. And Cynthia, I'd like to ask you some questions about really some of the learning gaps in programming. So I'd really like to know how you identify those learning gaps in our practice, and then how do you decide what's a priority for this year's program as well?
Sure, that's a great question. It really is a team effort, and a team effort in the sense not just of gold, but beyond into our communities. Of course, we are surveying our delegates that to ask them what do they need, what do they see, what do they wish they could get some training on. Um, and of course, they are located around the world, so it's not kind of
Mm,
a
of
limited source of
course.
information. It's across a variety of settings and roles globally. And speaking of globally, we have input from our professional advisory committee that really generously shares their wisdom and their experience to give us input on what they see as needed to meet those learning gaps. And then beyond that, there's always the deep dive into research in the field of lactation and other fields that are related to lactation. You can't only
Right.
look at lactation
Yeah.
journals. And so that takes a lot of time to dive into what the research is across a variety of journals and fields, and scanning for hot topics, things that just keep coming up again and
Mhm.
again, emerging events, whether it's disaster related or disease related,
Mhm.
um, issues that people are becoming more and more aware of, and there's just kind of a groundswell of interest in it. And so really kind of keeping our thumb on the pulse of the lactation field, formal resources to, like research or humans out there doing the work, social media, who's talking about what, who's asking questions, who's
Mm.
not finding answers, really just
Mhm.
diving into all of that. As far as topics selected, I mean, we really have such a broad variety of topics in the program this year. And as I scan through it, it's like we're trying to really convey the complexity of lactation, right? We don't just
Mm-hmm.
have a person and they're somehow transferring milk, right? It's like,
Right.
what's their setting? What support do they have? What are their challenges? And so if you scan through the topics, we're really covering a variety of issues, anything from alcohol consumption, sexual intimacy, infant reflexes, lactation anaphylaxis, HIV supply issues, whether it's relactation, oversupply, insufficient glandular tissue. What if you're working with an incarcerated mother who's trying to breastfeed? What if you're trying to help support a family by engaging a father?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, medication use is an ongoing need for all of us to know. And then there's ethics always. What about digital privacy? How do you protect that? And how do you keep up with research and then translate the research into your practice? So we've really we've made an effort to address a wide variety of needs that our delegates will have. And to dive even more deeply into some of the areas that we discovered, the complex cases that we mentioned earlier, that can happen in terms of a baby where the baby is experiencing some really complex medical challenges, and what do we need to know to support that family. But then you can also have complex issues in the lactating parent. So we've bundled up some incredible presentations related to both those areas of complex cases. And then we've got, as we've talked about the diversity in our world, we're learning more about how important it is to have the skills to effectively work with people that are not like us. And we're also learning more about these stigmas that exist and the
Mm.
unconscious biases that we hold. And so we've got, some presentations that directly address some specific areas that relate to that. For example, what about alcohol use during lactation? And of course, incarceration that I mentioned earlier. So the general idea is that we need to be able to care for the family as a whole in the reality that they live in, not the
Mm-hmm.
ideal world that would make
Mhm.
lactation so easy, but the reality of what they're actually experiencing. And so keeping up with all of that knowledge and the research on it is very difficult. So we're trying to do the work for you to stay on top of all of that and then curate a program that will meet a variety of needs in different settings around the world.
Wow, I mean, that's a lot to digest right there, but it does take a tremendous amount of work, as you said, and we rely on a large group of folks, to work on that. And for you, Fleur, I know, like I said, we mentioned that you were closely working with Cynthia and some of our
Mhm.
teams here at Gold. What was your experience this year in putting the program together and looking at the trends that we see right now?
Well, it's always a fascinating experience. I really love the research phase of putting the conference together because it is really interesting to be able to do that dive into the research and what people are talking about on social media, what we're seeing in the news, all of that. And putting the conference together it's a really dynamic process. It's a long process. So we start usually a year out and we start with that research phase. We are gathering information from our professional advisory committee who, we have members coming from different places around the world, different professions, different perspectives, and all of that is really important when it comes to building a program that is going to meet the needs of our diverse delegates. And, we go through a lot of back and forth. So there's a lot of meetings, a lot of discussion, looking at the research, looking at where we think we should go. We do a lot of things like looking at the IBLCE blueprint to make sure that we are addressing all of the different areas that, lactation lactation professionals need to be addressing. And one of the things that we do really like to pay attention to is what are some of those neglected areas, the areas that don't necessarily get talked about a lot. Some of the skills that are maybe weak points for some of us because it's not stuff that gets talked about a lot. So, for example, things like understanding research. It may seem like it's not the most exciting topic, but at the same time, when we're learning and we're reading journals, having that knowledge and being able to critically assess what we're reading is so important. So, we're always looking for those gaps, areas where we feel that, we need to help delegates get that information. We're always looking for those topics that are going to push us a little bit. So, sometimes we're looking at topics, as Cynthia mentioned, about alcohol use during lactation and incarcerated families and sexual intimacy, topics that sometimes, may not seem like the typical things to think about or talk about, and sometimes are hard to talk about. And that's one of the other things is I really feel like when we go through this process of programming, that's one of the things that we do pay attention to is what are those hard topics that really we do need to be paying attention to. And even though they're hard, they're really important. And the only way that all of us are going to learn and grow both professionally and personally is by, actually tackling some of those more difficult topics and, being willing to look at our own biases. It's something we do during the planning process. So, Cynthia and I had a lot of those kind of conversations about okay, well, we're looking at this, but do we have some bias coming into play when we're thinking about this? So there's a lot of that goes on even during the planning process. And then, like I say, we really like to try to challenge our delegates with that too, with the information that we're providing in the program. So a lot of work that goes into it.
Yeah, a lot of shared experiences there amongst the team members that are part of the planning committee as well. So it's just wonderful to hear a bit of a breakdown on that as well. Well, now we're here just rounding out talking about our program today. And I think this is just something that I always want to hear some feedback on. But Fleur, maybe you can tell me about some of the excitement around our Gold Lactation 2020 program this year and some of the things that are coming up for our delegates.
Absolutely, Fiona. And I am so excited for Gold Lactation 2020 as we start a new decade. We are also introducing lots of new things to our lactation program. Some very exciting stuff going on. First of all, we have the introduction of having as many of our speakers as possible on video. So both of our keynote speakers for those free keynote presentations will be on video, so be sure not to miss that. And we also have some new sessions that we've introduced this year, some interactive sessions where the goal is really to move our delegates from passive learner, where you're not just sitting, listening and watching a PowerPoint, but really shifting towards the delegates being active participants in the program. So we have 4 interactive sessions this year that have been put together specifically with that goal. So very excited. We have some amazing speakers doing that. We're going to have Ask the Expert, facilitated discussion, a workshop, and clinical case studies. So all of that is going to be so exciting. Can't wait to share all of that with you. And the other thing is our panel. So we'll be doing a panel again this year. And this year our focus is on the real life experience of lactation professionals. And the inspiration for that came from the frequent posts that we're seeing in professional groups about the mental and emotional struggles that come with being part of this profession. And Cynthia and I both felt that was a really important thing to be talking about because we can't care for others if we're not caring for ourselves. So lots of interesting discussion to take place about that, how we can nurture ourselves in order to make sure that we are in the best place to be nurturing the families that we care for. And yeah, just, with all of those additions and given all of the effort that went into planning this program, we really have a very dynamic, interactive program that pushes all of us to learn, grow, challenge stigma, challenge our own biases. And the other thing, of course, is have lots of fun. So that's one of
Absolutely.
the, amazing things about Gold. You and our other MC, Kristen, always brings so much energy to the program. And our delegates, of course, bring so much energy in our live sessions. The chat in the live sessions is something I really love because there's so much learning that goes on there too when you have
Right.
the interaction with people from around the world. And just that conversation that gets going during the presentation is so exciting and just, always so much fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you. It certainly sounds like the place to be this year. And just wanting to thank Cynthia again for being with us here today. But Cynthia, can you tell me what you're excited about sharing with our program this year?
Oh my goodness. I'm really excited about the entire program. It's like pick your favorite among like I don't know how many favorites. I'm really excited about the lecture packs related to the complex
Mm,
medical needs.
yeah.
As a parent who's had complex medical needs in both my children,
Mm,
it's like wow, when you need people to know things and they don't know it, what impact it has on you, negatively.
sure.
And when you need people to know it and they do know it, oh my word, what a
Mm.
positive impact it has. So I'm very excited about that. I'm excited about so many things, musculoskeletal, I can't speak. Musculoskeletal issues that impact lactation. That's a really important topic. Um, and queer milk, inclusive care for LGBTQ families, relactation, which is important in all kinds of contexts,
Mm,
from emergency situations to medical situations, having a baby in the NICU. So many reasons you might need to relactate. I'm really excited about the panel, quite honestly. Just to be able to have that conversation about what it's like in real life. And also the facilitated discussion about infant and young child feeding in emergencies. I
mm,
mean, the world is everywhere you turn. You cannot assume that this will, some
Yeah.
kind of emergency will not affect your community. And so it is very important for everyone to be prepared for that before it happens.
absolutely.
And another thing I'm excited about are the discussion forums. The conversation that keeps going after the presentation is over. That we keep being able to interact with speakers and with each other in the discussion forums. I think that's just a really wonderful component of Gold Lactation.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. The conversation can keep going. So I would just like to say a big thank you to both Cynthia and Fleur for joining me here today. And in order to keep this conversation going, that's right, folks, you can actually comment below here. Let us know what you're looking forward to for this year's conference. And of course, let us know what you're looking for in future events here at Gold. We're always open to listening to what your needs are, and we can't wait for your feedback. Well, you can join us for our online Gold Lactation Conference this year for 2020. Registration is open, and you can go to our website at goldlactation.com. You can join us on March 30th for our live and opening keynote with Brenna Sampe, and she's going to be talking about breastfeeding with ease, the impact of infant reflex emergence and integration. Well, thank you to both of you for joining me here today, and of course to all of our listening audience as well. Bye-bye for now, everyone.